All right. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hi.
Debbie. This is Phil. I'm president of Vaca Valley Alona Club.
Okay. Terry,
Hi, I'm Terry. I'm the secretary.
Steve, hi.
Steve.
Hi.
Paula.
Hi, I'm Bill. I'm
Hi,
the
Bill.
treasurer of the
All right.
Backer Valley Alarm Club.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank you very much for allowing me to do this role play and homework assignment with you. And I'd like to talk about a few reasons why I'm doing it. So, first of all, one of the main reasons why I'm doing this particular project is that we have been aboard together now for exactly a year. So, our work together as a team has been well underway for a year. And when our board convened, none of us had ever worked together before. Okay. And so at our inception, we didn't formally organize and agree on a set of working principles. Okay. And so here is the main point, my curiosity is that when team's work is well underway, is it possible to introduce new guidelines for working together, making decisions, and setting goals? So that's the main point. So my goal today is not for us to make decisions. Rather, I just would like to discuss a new plan and ask you to listen to my overview of a set of guiding principles and to reflect on how you'd like to proceed in the coming year. So first, you recall that us all do a survey at the last board meeting. And so you have a page in front of you with yellow highlighting on it.
Yes.
That's all the questions that you answered
Okay.
with everybody's answers recorded. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go over every question, but what I think might not be a bad idea is for each of us to individually go over these and reflect on the answers and decide for ourselves how we feel about the answers. But what I would like to do is skip down to the questions that I put in, the answers are in red.
Hmm.
I put those answers in red because we all answered those somewhat unanimously. And I'm not going to discuss solutions to these questions. I'm just going to highlight the example behind them. So, for example, it says, my team members asked for feedback regarding flaws in their thinking. And you can see the answers there. There was one that neither disagreed or agreed, but everyone else was two strongly disagrees and then three disagrees. So that's fairly unanimous in our feelings.
Hmm.
And then if you skip down to the next one, it says, my team members asked how they may have contributed to a problem. And pretty much everybody disagreed or strongly disagreed with one neutral answer. And finally, the third one I'll cover is my team members seem more interested in getting their ideas implemented than in hearing others' views. And as you can see, another fairly unanimous response from our board. And so, what these questions are is they reflect the objectives for two things I'm going to cover in a few minutes. So, they really are like, they show how have we hit the mark on some of these? Are we approaching the mark? Are we far away from the mark based on the way we answered these questions? Okay, and when I say the mark, you'll see what that is in just a moment. So I'm going to wrap up on the survey for now, but we can definitely use it in the future if we decide as a group that we are interested in this at all. Okay,
Okay.
so if you would go to your next handout, you'll see two columns. Okay, and what I'd like to do is summarize two models for us to consider implementing in 2013.
Okay.
They are the ground rules, something called the ground rules, and something called the mutual learning model. And many organizations apply these as a way of increasing productivity, improving decision-making process, improving the quality of stated outcomes, and creating higher satisfaction among team members. So first, the ground rules. I'm going to go over these ground rules and I'm going to offer a few examples just to elaborate if I can. And so let's start with ground rule number one, test assumptions and inferences. I'm thinking you're concerned we will go over budget if we proceed, for example. And then I might say, if I'm testing an assumption or inference, I might say, am I on the right track here? So I might check for clarification. Ground rule number two says, share all relevant information. Is there more details you can share with us on this? If so, would you be willing to share those details? So that would be an example of that. And ground rule number three states use specific examples and agree on what important words mean. So when a board member is talking in general terms, we could perhaps say, can you give us an example of this, of a time this happened, so we may better understand. Okay, and then ground rule number 4, explain your reasoning and intent. So, can you help us understand your reasoning by walking us through how you came to that conclusion? Ground rule number 5, focus on interests, not positions. So, when we don't understand why a possible solution is being suggested or refused, we might be able to say, what needs does this solution meet? Or, what needs are not being addressed by the proposal? And ground rule number 6, combine advocacy and inquiry. If we feel a board member is asking questions without sharing his or her view, we could perhaps state, can you say what you're thinking about this issue? Ground rule number 7, jointly design next steps and ways to test disagreements. So, may I suggest a way to proceed and get your input? For example, I might say, I suggest we do X because, and then I might follow up with, what problems does anyone see with this? And ground rule number 8, discuss undiscussable issues. I want to raise what might be a sensitive issue and get your reaction. I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot. Rather, I'm trying for us to work better as a team. Here's what I have observed and what I see as the issue. What do others think? And finally, ground rule number 9, use a decision-making rule that generates the level of commitment needed. And if you'll look at the example on that one, I was able to come up with a pretty clear example of where we're hitting the mark on that. For example, us as a board, we commonly, for our decision-making rule, we commonly use consensus, and sometimes we are required to vote. So that's the rule that we use for ground rule number 9. Okay, so I'm concluding on the ground rules, and I'm going to move to the mutual learning model before we wrap up. Okay, so the mutual learning model coupled with ground rules constitute an effective way of making decisions. So I'll share those with you now. Okay, so the mutual learning mindset consists of 5 core values, and they are transparency, curiosity, informed choice, accountability, and compassion. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit further. The mutual learning model assumes that we have information and so do other people. People may disagree with me and still have pure motives. I may be contributing to the problem. Each of us sees things others don't. And lastly, differences are opportunities for learning. Okay. And the results of the mutual learning model are shorter implementation times, increased commitment, higher quality decisions, increased learning, improved working relationships, and greater personal satisfaction and well-being. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just go ahead and wrap up, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to review the results of our survey, go over the ground rules and the mutual learning model. And if you agree, and after reviewing the handouts, perhaps we can revisit this at our next board meeting. So I want to thank you again for allowing me to do the presentation.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks for having us be part of it.